Well, the investigation into Hunter Biden. President Trump is asking for the appointment of a special counsel to take over the federal investigation of Hunter Biden's shady tax dealings. Former Attorney General Bill Barr says that he sees no need for one. Let's bring in California Congressman-elect Darrell Issa. Also here on Running Long with us, we have Lee Carter and Mitch Rochelle joining the show. Congressman-elect Issa, formerly Congressman Issa, it's great to see you this morning. So, do you expect that there's going to be hearings on Hunter Biden in 2021, given the change in the administration?
I do. I believe the Senate is required to continue investigating. And as the president has said, a special counsel is almost absolutely mandated. And I understand the attorney general's statement, but he's simply wrong. The inherent conflict of the new attorney general appointed by the president serving at the pleasure of President Biden creates a conflict that is not acceptable when it's the president's own son.
But is there anything Congress can do about that?
Well, we can continue to call for a special prosecutor. I called for a special prosecutor, or said we should have a special prosecutor, with President Trump. I also said that, and the Attorney General recused himself and left it to a career professional. Now, that's been controversial. Obviously, plenty of people saw a lot of pain for the president as Mueller went through his investigation. But at the end, when he was cleared, that clearing was believable because he was not a friend of the president, he was not beholden to the president, and he truly acted independently. Anything less than that, and it will be simply a whitewash if Hunter Biden somehow squeaks through without an indictment.
Well, we'll see what develops in that story. Another big story we're following this morning is this high tax exodus. The survey that's come out from the Brookings Institution. They used census data, and they estimate that both New York and your state, California, are going to each lose a congressional seat next year. Florida would gain 2 seats. Texas would gain 3. I want to get your reaction to that. Plus, you've got another New York shutdown looming. You've got a rise in cases. I mean, and then you've got the exodus in California, which we've already seen kind of happening, especially from the business exodus from California to Texas. Your reaction to this new idea of losing seats?
Well, a decade ago, Art Laffer, the famous economist, left California for Tennessee because he just said one more tax increase and I'm gone, and he got the tax increase. But it's not just taxes. When you leave California for Texas, you leave California's high regulatory and unfriendly business environment for a friendly business environment, one in which you can get your plants up and running faster, your employees are more available, and the reality is that things like AB 5 that prohibit using people as independent contractors in California and a host of other poorly thought out laws are driving people away from a state where up until now they were willing to pay the high taxes. But when you combine high taxes with a business unfriendly environment, employers leave and employees leave. And that's why our population is shrinking, and it will continue to.
I want to bring in my colleague Lee Carter into this because, Lee, you've always got your finger on the pulse of the voter. This shows that the voters are going to be shifting. They're going to have more choices in Texas and in Florida than they do in California and New York.
There's no question about it. I think the thing that's going to be interesting to see what happens to the demographics and the voting base in those states, because what's happening in Florida, a lot of people are choosing to move to Florida. In Texas, a lot of big businesses are moving to Texas. So does that mean that it's going to become more of a swing state? Does it mean there's going to be more Democrats in that state that are coming because their employer has relocated them? And it's not because they're thinking about the business-friendly environment. It's rather that they think about things a little bit differently. We're going to have more split tickets. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out and how people really sort of define what it means to be a conservative versus a liberal and what's most important to them. Because right now, people vote sort of at the national level, not really thinking about what it means for their state level. These are the kinds of changes that can really have a huge impact.
Yeah, Darrell, your reaction to that? That's a great point she brings up.
Well, I think it's important to look at the last election. 5 million more people voted Democrat in California than voted Republican. Well, 1 million more voted Republican rather than Democrat in Texas. So there's a little bit of a ways to go before Texas starts looking like California. But there's no question at all, when you see a Democrat in Texas and you talk about business and what they believe should be fair, they have a much more conservative view. So I think there is a fact that you could become more purple in Texas, but purple in Texas will not be like blue in California for a very long time.
Although that's a good point, though, that a lot of those voters are moving to Texas. And Mitch Rochelle, I want to bring you on the issue of New York, other side of the country, also potentially losing a seat.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting where the seat comes from and whether or not that sort of changes some of the dynamics. The thing that I worry about, though, in New York is the erosion of the tax base. With more and more people going to Florida, the loss of sales tax and the loss of revenue because of shutdowns is one thing, but we're losing a tremendous amount of tax base, and that's a hole that will be very difficult to dig out of. And I agree with the congressman's point about regulation, because it's not just people leaving, it's businesses leaving as well. You're seeing Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan talking about moving operations to Florida or Texas because it's a more pro-business, and that's where the workforce is moving as well.
Yeah. You know, and Darrell, I do want to move on to something. It's kind of unbelievable and frankly sad to see what's happening in California with the pandemic. California just became the first state to surpass 2 million reported cases in our country. A lot of regions there, Southern California in particular, they've got 0% ICU capacity. That happened over the holiday weekend. I mean, what's going on here? Is a statewide shutdown order just going to have to go in full effect for the Golden State?
Well, unfortunately, an order that isn't obeyed becomes pretty frivolous and meaningless, and that's what started to happen. Remember, our governor was sitting with his healthcare professionals, no mask, having a dinner right after he told everyone that they should close their restaurants and go home. There's a disconnect between these orders and the obedience. People are simply tired of being told things that make no sense. The governor has cut out outside dining, even with 6 feet of separation, making no sense. So what we have to regain if we're going to control the COVID in California is a sense that the orders are reasonable and predictable rather than on impulses of the governor. Now, fortunately, here in San Diego, we had 250 beds that the federal government had paid for that were converted to ICU, and only 2 days ago, the governor agreed to open those up. So we actually are not at zero. We have 250 ICU units that have never been used that are now available, but it's only through federal assistance that we're able to keep up right now.
Well, and I think that comes really, it's LA County. To me, that seems to be the biggest issue here. And I have family and friends, obviously, in California and Southern California that say that, look, Cheryl, 20% of the people out there are wearing masks, and they think that that's part of the reason that they've had such a surge there. There's also concern in California that new strain that we saw in the UK could actually be in California. Have you heard anything about that? Is that a possibility as well to explain why there's been such a surge?
There's no question at all. It will shortly be all over the United States. You know, you can't have something like that in one country and not have it quickly in another. The fact is, though, that our healthcare professionals, almost all, have now had their shots. We're getting past what they call 1A. So the good news is that the people who most are in contact with infection and possible transmittal are all going to have their shots by early January. This is one example where just in time really is just in time. Without that vaccine, January, February, March in California could be disastrous.
Well, it certainly is. Again, it's heartbreaking to see what's happening out there where you are. And I'm not the first person, I'm sure, to say welcome back to Congress. It's good to see you. Congratulations.
I hope it's good to be back, Cheryl. I'm not sure.
You got a lot of work ahead, but you're brave for returning, certainly.
We do.
All right. We'll see you very soon, I'm sure, on the show. Congressman-elect Darrell Issa.
Thank you,
sir.